What's she trying to say by that? Yeah, don't text me. It's a bad idea. So just to cover a few things before I get started. One, it's great to be here. I always love the opportunity to get to share with you on a Sunday morning. You're a little bit more mature and attentive than a lot of the people I teach week after week. So, hey, how's it going? Owen, you're still here. See, Owen, this little guy, he just graduated from Rock Church, so it's nice. I've got a fan, right? No. All right. Just remember Pastor in your prayers when he's gone. You know, we all understand Pastor works really hard. He does a lot for us, and a lot of the stuff that he does, we don't even really see. It's not out there in view of everyone, but I just hope that he has a really good time on his vacation. And Pastor, if you're watching this live, it's a lot nicer to have you in the front row because I kind of get like the nod of approval. Just shout out like an amen to the prayer chain or something like that if you're on board. But we're leaving today to drive actually out to New Jersey. We're going to be visiting our family in Maine, so we drive to New Jersey, and then on from there where I get to see my father for the first time since he was diagnosed with lymphoma. And I've had a lot of people tell me that they're praying for him, and a lot of people ask how he's doing, and I really appreciate you guys doing that. You know, it means a lot to me. My father, he's a great man. He's lived a very, very difficult life with his cerebral palsy, and part of me says that he's dealt with so much that there's no way that this could beat him, and then the other part of me says that, you know, no matter what happens, my best days with my father are still ahead of me. So I really appreciate the care and the concern that I've gotten from people here, and we'll keep praying and hope for the best. So today we'll be starting off the new series, Real People, Real Life. And the text for Real People, Real Life that we'll be covering for the month of September comes from Titus 2:11. For the grace of God has appeared, bringing salvation for all people. All people, no matter who they are, no matter where they're from, these real people living their real lives are able to be reached with the love of God and with the power of Christ and the power of the gospel. The message that I have planned for today, Suzanne put M&M in the bulletin, so she said I should bring some of these. But it's actually going to be about Mary and Martha, and I found it kind of interesting because I've planned this for months, that this would be the next time that I shared on a Sunday morning. I'd be talking about Mary and Martha, and it happens to come right on the heels of Pastor's series, Rest Area. And in my troublesome sort of humor, I thought that the best thing to call this would be, instead of Rest Area ahead, it would be Work Zone ahead. Because we've all heard the story of Mary and Martha and about how the busyness happens and about how it's important to stop and take time to listen to the Word of God, to spend time in God's presence. But we're going to read Luke chapter 10, verses 38 through 42, and then we'll have a quick prayer. Luke chapter 10, verses 38 through 42. While they were traveling, he entered a village, and a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister named Mary, who also sat at the Lord's feet and was listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks, and she came up and asked, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to serve alone?" So he told me, "So go tell her to give me a hand." And then the Lord answered her, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset about many things, but one thing is necessary. Mary has made the right choice, and it will not be taken away from her." Lord, we thank you for your word today. We thank you that it still speaks to us today the same way it did thousands of years ago when it was written. And I just pray that today you would make this word real to us, that you would reach out to us and you would touch us and minister to us in our real lives, in our real day-to-day. We know that your word can change us and can make a difference to us. So I just pray that we would be attentive and that we would learn and we'd be willing to accept what you have to say to change our attitudes and change our hearts. In Jesus' name, amen. So I would say right at the very beginning that most people who have ever preached from this text have been wrong. Okay. How is that possible, you ask? Just ask me about the pre-trib rapture later and I'll explain it. I'm just kidding. So, see, this text normally receives this kind of one-sided treatment, right? How many of you here have ever heard this text preached from before? Okay, it's probably been most of us. We're probably fairly familiar with it. But I think that most of the time, the preachers, the commentators, the people who write about it, the people who write their books with the flowers on the cover, they get this text wrong, or they, at the very best, miss the point, and they give an incomplete picture of what it's saying. You see, we're going to believe, if we take everything that we hear about this, that Martha was busy, and that being busy was Martha's problem, and that Jesus comes up to her and corrects her and says, hey, you shouldn't be so busy. You shouldn't be doing all the things that you're doing. Mary has got it figured out, and Mary's got it right. And you need to be more like Mary rather than be like yourself. Now, we're going to leave Mary alone. We're not going to talk about Mary. I'm just going to kind of shove her into a box for another sermon for another day. But this idea that Martha was, and I'm going to get their names switched, just going to let you tell that right now. I can look at it on paper and say the wrong one, so if I say the wrong one, please forgive me. But we're told that Martha was rebuked for being busy, and Mary was doing the one thing that was really needed, right? That's the treatment that it oftentimes gets. I had a class in college where I had to read something that some psychologist wrote, and the psychologist was talking about the difference between the doers and the beers. The beers are the people who are more focused on their presence with people and are more focused on being there in a relational kind of way and, supporting people and loving people and caring for people. And it's just wonderful to be a beer, the psychologist says. But then there's these other people, these nasty people called doers. And these are the people that are just busy, and they don't care about you, they don't care about anything, they don't care what's going on around them, they're just concentrated on this task, they're all about doing. And the doers are just these nasty, nasty people that you don't want to be. Well, that might be right if you're a psychologist or if you're a counselor. Sure, you would rather be a beer than a doer, because a doer is going to try to fix the person with a problem rather than just be there to listen it out and try to help. Because you can't fix that person's problem, so don't try, just be. That works if you're a counselor. That works if you're a psychologist. That doesn't work if you're the person who has to build the building that they have their office in. You see, the doers and the beers are just different kinds of people. One of them's not better than the other one for the simple fact that they're wired a different way. Some of you fit more into the beer category, some of you fit more into the doer category, and that's fine. We're just different. If we were all beers, nothing would ever get done. If we were all doers, everybody would hate each other all the time. That's simply how God made us. So the idea that Martha was corrected because she's a doer and Mary is commended because she's a beer, I believe is false. And after a quick explanation, we'll see that. Now, in the HCSB, which was the text that I read from, the reading is, but one thing is necessary, and Mary has made the right choice. Now, that's not very well translated. The ESV says, but one thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the good portion. Instead of saying she's made the better choice, it says she's chose the good portion. And that's more accurate to what the original Greek text is, because the word there, good, isn't modifying the word choice. It's more like a standalone kind of noun sort of usage. Mary is choosing the benefit part. Mary has chosen that which is better. The NASB says, but only one thing is necessary, for Mary has chosen the good part. The NIV says, but few things are needed, or indeed only one, and Mary has chosen what is better. A lot of the footnotes in your Bibles are going to indicate that the NIV reading is how a lot of them say, or that the most literal reading is that she has chosen the good part. But every single one of them throw this thing in there on the end, and that is, this will not be taken away from her, or she has chosen the better part, which will not be taken away from her. And I think that's going to be very important. We'll see that later. So why don't I agree with the traditional interpretation of this? First thing, what was Martha busy doing? She was serving. And we know throughout the whole of the New Testament that Jesus placed a very heavy emphasis on serving and on being a servant. Matthew chapter 20, verses 20 through 28, for instance. James and John. We know this probably from hearing it in the past. But Jesus called them over and said, oh, sorry, I changed the text there. It's verse 25. But Jesus called them over and said, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles dominate them, and the men of high position exercise power over them. It must not be like that among you. On the contrary, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be the first among you must be your slave, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many. Or look at John chapter 13, verses 12 through 7. Jesus has just washed the disciples' feet, which is a task that only a servant would do. Not somebody that was important, not somebody who meant anything, but a person who was a lowly servant would do this. And Jesus says, do you know what I have done for you? You call me teacher and Lord, and this is well said, for I am. So if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that you also should do just as I have done for you. I assure you, a slave is not greater than his master, and a messenger is not greater than the one who sent him. If you know these things, you are blessed if you do them. Or look at Luke chapter 17, 7 through 10. Which one of you, having a slave tending the sheep or plowing, will say to him when he comes in from the field, come at once and sit down to eat? Instead, will he not tell him, prepare something for me to eat, get ready and serve me while I eat and drink. Later, you can eat and drink. Does he thank that slave because he did what was commanded? In the same way, when you have done all that you were commanded, you should say, we are good for nothing slaves, we have only done our duty. When James and John, or when their mother comes up to Jesus and asks, who's the greatest in the kingdom? Jesus says, the servant, the person who's a slave among you. He doesn't say what? He doesn't say, you shouldn't be busy serving, you should just kind of sit here and listen to me. Or later on, when the servant's been busy doing what his master commanded him to do, and the master gets home, and the servant just keeps on serving him and later worries about himself. You see, the New Testament characterizes someone who is a follower of Christ as somebody who is committed to serving. There is no way we just forget that and accept the idea that Jesus rebukes Martha and says, you shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be busy. You shouldn't be serving. You need to focus more on listening. Second reason, what's the difference between needed or necessary and good and better or better? Jesus says to Martha, one thing is needed, and Mary has chosen the better part. Well, there's a distinct and obvious difference between those two words. One of them carries the idea of demands, duty, requirements, necessity. One thing's needed. The other word carries the idea of benefit, of enjoyment, of reward, something that's good in and of itself. Needed is the realistic. This has to be done. You just can't get around it. You have to go to work every day, right? Would it be better if you could just stay home and spend time with your family? Yeah, but that's not the realistic thing. The realistic thing is you go to work. The better thing would be that you could just spend time with your family doing what was more enjoyable. The ideal versus the realistic. The I want to do versus the I have to do. See, when Jesus uses the words needed and better, he's obviously, to me at least, talking about two different things. He says to Martha, one thing is needed, and Mary has chosen the better. You want to hear a rant? Okay. Have you ever met a pacifist? A pacifist would be somebody who's like opposed to all war, right? And there's plenty of different kinds of pacifists out there. Not all of them are bad. There's people who say that's not for me. I don't want to go to war, and I think war is, shun away from it. And I haven't served in the military. My wife has. I know many of you here have. But the pacifist who has this moral superiority complex where they think that because they're all against war, that for some reason that makes them more noble or more righteous or more loving and caring than somebody who at the very least will say isn't actively opposed to it. And I met a pacifist one time, and he says, "Oh, so you're pro-war?" I said, "Well, that's a stupid statement, but am I supposed to say something like that up here?" Now, here's the thing. Peace is obviously better than war, is it not? Nonviolence is obviously better than violence. Going to fight because there's tyranny or because there's wickedness or because there's evil or because there's oppression in the world, going to fight against somebody who's bent on doing violence is needed from time to time, but peace is always better. You see, if there were no war, that would be the ideal situation, right? If countries didn't have to go fight against each other, that would be ideal. But because we live in this real world where there's evil, where there's wickedness, where people are bent on doing very bad things, war exists. And some of you people here who have served in the military have had to go to war. You've had to push a button, pull a trigger, send out an airplane, do something like that. Never once in your mind ever wanting to wish harm on another human being in your life. But because it's called upon you, because you respond to that call, you go to war, you put on the uniform, and you do something that people stand back at home and say, that's wrong. They shouldn't have to do that. But I can guarantee you that that person can only live in peace because somebody else puts on the uniform and goes out and does what they're condemning. And George Orwell said that men sleep peaceably in their beds at night only because rough men stand by willing to do violence on their behalf. Somebody says you shouldn't own a gun for self-defense because you should just call the police. It's wrong for you to try to protect yourself. And then they call the police, who show up with what? With guns to protect them. Just exporting the decision that they don't want to have to make onto somebody else, outsourcing it onto somebody else, saying, you do it for me, I don't want to do it myself, but I'm better than you because I don't do it. See, pacifism bugs me when it's like that. Peace only exists for some because war exists for others. And Mary can only do what she's doing in this text because Martha is doing what she is. But people have robbed Martha to pay Mary for decades, for centuries, making it sound like she's making the wrong choice. Reason number 3. This leads right into it. Who does the work if Martha doesn't? Mary does. If Martha's not there, Martha was probably the older sister. It was expected of her to care for the guests, to care for the home, to serve, to do all those things. It was expected. That's how it is. Martha, that's your job. If she doesn't do it, it falls on Mary. And if you think to yourself, well, she should have had better priorities, she should have just planned this out better. Let me ask you a question. Jesus shows up to your house with his 12 disciples. There's no such thing as electricity or giant eagle. Are you going to be busy? Yeah. You're going to be very busy. No running water, no takeout. McDonald's is 2,000 years away. Something needs to be done. There's no realistic expectation that the work is just going to stop, that the need for something to happen is just not going to be there. Martha was a real person just like you and I. And no matter how many times we try to set time aside to relax or to just spend time with family, there's always something that's coming up, isn't there? There is always something that's trying to fight for your time to try to make it so that you can't just relax. The phone rings, something breaks down, you get the idea. This is real life. And Martha was in it. There's no expectation that because she just sits down and listens to what Jesus has to say, that her work is going to go away. It's not going to happen. So this interpretation, the traditional interpretation, I think it produces the opposite of the desired effect. You know why? Because somebody who says that Mary's doing what's needed now. Somebody who says that Mary's doing what's needed says to all the Marthas out there, hey, you need to drop what you're doing and come do this. So what does that make Martha say? Because Martha's work doesn't go away. Martha's still got a job to do. Martha's still going to be busy. So Martha says, well, hey, I'm supposed to be sitting in church just enjoying the presence of God. That's what I need to do. But what I have to do is go watch kids in the nursery. Well, that's not fair. Why doesn't somebody else just step up every once in a while and do something so that I don't have to be so busy all the time? You see what's going on here? See, Jesus is saying to Martha, you be happy and you be joyful where you are. Don't try to pull Mary away from something so that she can help you because you feel like you're missing out on something. And then Mary says, hey, don't talk to me about commitment. Don't talk to me about sacrifice. Don't talk to me about setting time out of my schedule. Don't talk to me about, serving. What I really want to do is just sit here. What I really need to do is just spend time singing sappy love songs of praise and enjoying myself. See, if we interpret the scripture that way, it leads to the opposite of what we'd like to see happen, right? It makes Martha bitter, and it makes Mary think that she doesn't need to do anything, that she can just spend the rest of her life in some romantic fairy tale of... You understand that sound effect, right? You know exactly what that sound effect means. You see, this isn't some romantic story about how important it is to spend time with Jesus. This is the first example of Christian service that has turned sour. This is somebody who has become discontent because they're doing what's expected of them, and they've stamped their foot down and said, I shouldn't have to do this, somebody should have to help me. And Martha was corrected not because she was wrapped up in doing, but because she was wrapped up in receiving. Because she was wrapped up in what was about her and about what was fair, rather than being wrapped up in what's called for and what's about other people. And Jesus, I think, could have said to her, in place of what the text reads, I think that he could be saying, Martha, I know you have a lot to do, but while you were busy doing what was needed, Mary was able to receive something that made an eternal difference to her. Don't try to take that away from her. Does that sound understandable? Does that sound like he could have been saying that? Martha, I know you had a lot to do. I know that you were busy. I know that you're upset over this. But while you were being busy and doing what was needed, Mary really needed something different. Mary really needed to just sit here and listen. And because of that, her soul is changed. Her life is changed. And that's never going to be taken away from her. What you did was good, but your attitude is wrong. What you're doing is right, but your attitude needs to change. So because Jesus placed a high value on serving, because certain things need to be done and the work never goes away, because we want to avoid frustration and laziness, we got to understand what Jesus is trying to say to Martha. And I think there's three things I think that we can take from this that Martha needs to know. Number one, Martha needs to remember what serving is all about. Yes, it would be better if you could sit here and listen to me. Yes, it would be better if you could just take a load off and be ministered to. But Martha, you need to understand what serving is all about. You see, serving is not self-focused. You can see it in what she says there. Mary has left me to serve alone. Tell her to help me. Not tell her to serve you. Not tell her to step up and do something for the good of other people. Tell her to help me. Because after all, isn't that who this is about? Is me. It's not about you. Serving isn't done for one's own recognition. Serving isn't done so that you can walk up and say, "Excuse me, I want everybody to know how wonderful and humble I am." No. Serving isn't in itself a rewarding act. What serving is, on the other hand, is others focused for the benefit of somebody else. What serving is done instead of for your own glory, it's done for God's glory. And serving is a giving act, not necessarily a rewarding act. Not something that in and of itself benefits you, but something that you're giving to somebody else for their benefit. So Jesus is telling her, because you've missed what serving is all about, because you need to understand serving, don't fault Mary for wanting to listen. Don't fault Mary for needing to be ministered to. Don't fault Mary because of the position that she's in, because someday she's going to be serving somebody else, because someday she's going to move on to other things. But today she needs something else, and you're missing the point. There's always going to be somebody who serves, and there's always going to be somebody who benefits from the service, isn't there? Jesus has called us to have a love for other people that says, forget about me. Forget about what's good for me. Forget about what benefits me. But let me do something for the benefit of somebody else. Because I want to see them receive that which is better. And it makes it worth it to me anyway. When I serve, it makes it worth it to me to see somebody else be able to receive from God. It makes it worth it that somebody gets to receive the word of God, that they get to listen to the teaching of the pastor, that they get to listen to the sermon, that they get to enter into worship, because we know how wonderful and how amazing the presence of God is. To me, it's worth it if somebody else gets to stand there and worship without a care in their mind, without needing to worry about a thing, without wondering what their kids are doing, without wondering about their baby's poopy diaper. Just take a load off and relax and receive from God. And it's worth it to me if their life gets to be changed by that, even if I have to do something. And even if I feel like I'm missing out on something, I'm not. Because every single act of service that you do goes on into eternity. Every single time that you serve somebody, that you put their needs above yours, that goes on into eternity as though you were doing it for Jesus Christ himself. Because when we serve others, we are really serving Christ. And that's what we've been called to do as Christians. And that's what Martha needs to understand. Number 2, Martha needs to learn to find joy in serving. We know this text very well, 2 Corinthians 9:7-8. Each person should do as he has decided in his heart, not reluctantly or out of necessity, for God loves a cheerful giver, right? And that's talking about money. Literally, in that context, Paul is talking about money. Verse 8, and God is able to make every grace overflow to you, so that in every way, always having everything you need, you may excel in every good work. So yes, that's about money. But do you think God is happy when you give your time cheerfully too? I think he might be. So it certainly could be about time, because I understand whatever you do for God, whatever you put your hand to, you should do it with a joy and appreciation. When God asks you to do something, when he lays it upon you to sacrifice, to serve, to do something for other people, I don't think that he wants our attitude to be one of, well, this is dumb, why do I have to do this again? No, but I think he wants us to do it with joy and appreciation, with cheerfulness, with happiness, being thankful for the opportunity. And it says there that we'd be overflowing in grace and excelling in good work. You understand that the principle of always enough, right? I've experienced this. I'm sure many of you have experienced this, but let's say you feel led to give some money to something, and you say to yourself, I really have better uses for that money than to give it to somebody else. But you do it anyway. A week later, are you saying to yourself, man, I wish I didn't do that? At least with me, generally, that's not the case. Usually, if I do something like that, I find out within a matter of hours that it's more rewarding than just keeping it to yourself. Right? Because when you sacrifice something for God, there's this principle in the kingdom of God where, it doesn't matter. It's almost like you just didn't do it. Something comes back to you and you always have enough, right? And that's kind of what Paul is saying to them. You should give not reluctantly, for God loves a cheerful giver, and God is able to make every grace overflow to you, so that in every way, always having everything you need, you may excel in good work. Regardless of the fact that you just gave this, you don't go on missing that, but God overflows his grace to you so that you can continue to excel in every good work. And that's sort of how it is when you serve other people. Don't think that when you serve somebody that you're missing out on something, because God is able to make that grace overflow back to you. It's the always enough principle. Let's look at John chapter 13 again, the text where Jesus washed his disciples' feet. He says, "Do you know what I have done for you? You call me teacher and Lord. This is well said, for I am. So if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that you also should do just as I have done for you. I assure you, a slave is not greater than his master, and a messenger is not greater than the one who sent him. If you know these things, you are blessed if you do them." Jesus has just done a job that the lowest servant would do. Jesus, the King and Lord of all creation, came to this earth to sacrifice himself. And he says, when you do these things, when you humble yourself, when you serve others, happy are you if you do them. So there, just take that. That was free. Matthew 20:27. "And whoever wants to be first among you must be your slave, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life a ransom for many." You see, Jesus came to this earth deserving praise, deserving worship, deserving a throne, deserving so much better than he got. But instead of just expecting that he was going to receive those things, he humbled himself and he became a servant. He humbled himself and he gave his life for others. And he asked you and I to do that same thing because he did it, because the Lord served his disciples, and because no one's greater than him, no one is above that call to service. Nobody can say, "I don't have to do that. That's not me. That's not my responsibility." Nobody can just step out of it and say, "Don't talk to me about serving," because Jesus himself did it. And it may not make sense. It may not make sense to be happy when you sacrifice for other people. It might not be easy. It might take a little bit of effort, but you have the chance to show the goodness that God has given you to other people. And there's blessing involved in that. Jesus says, "Blessed are you if you do this. Happy are you if you do this. If you follow my example and give and serve." So Martha's not missing out on anything by giving Mary the opportunity to do what Martha would rather be doing. Martha's reward is so much greater than getting to sit there and listen for a few hours maybe. Martha's reward is out there in eternity. And she needs to understand to find joy in doing that rather than to grow bitter and resentful about it. And the last one is Martha needs to learn to avoid worry by having the proper priorities. Is anybody here busy? I don't have time for another day off. I'll just say that. I only work 4 days a week now. I felt like I had way more time when I worked 6 days a week. Just don't talk to me about another day off. It's not going to happen. I think that someday we're going to find that Satan distracted more people with busyness than he did with things like pride, at least today. He tempts more people with being busy all the time and never having enough time to do what they should be doing, or to be spending their time with the Lord, or having their time to serve. He'll distract more people with that than with pride, than with greed, then with lust, then with a number of things. Because we have all of these things that we'd like to do, right? We have all of these obligations, we have all of these commitments, and they just never go away. Real life gets in the way. To revisit the way that the NIV translated the verse that we read from, Jesus says to her, few things are needed, in the NIV. Few things are needed, or indeed only one, and Mary has chosen the better part. Martha, you're worried about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one, and Mary has chosen the better part. And I think that contrast between the many things and the few things are important. Because Martha, if she was anything like a lot of you are, and like I can be sometimes, when she's trying to get all these things ready, she was probably trying to make sure everything was perfect, and she was probably over-preparing, and she probably had just way too much stuff that she brought upon herself that she was trying to get done so that she could, impress Peter or impress Jesus or, make sure that everybody had everything perfect. But you're worried about many things, but only really a few things are needed. You see, I think that instead of worrying about many things, we should worry about only a few things. Instead of being busy with the many things, we should probably try to be busy and do better with a few things, right? Because I think that a lot of us, I know I do, and I'm sure that if you searched your heart, you'd find that you've done this too, that we fill our life with so many things that don't matter as much. That we have less and less time to do the right things, to do what we know we need to. You see, our time is a gift from God. He's given it to us to use for Him. He's given it to us to invest back into His kingdom, and we've got to get our priorities straight. We've got to every once in a while say, you know what, I'm not doing this. I'm saying no to that. I really want to do this, but I'm going to put it off because I have other things that I need to be concerned about. And if we would do that, I think that we would really experience a great blessing from God. But I want to read something. I had something a few weeks ago that I knew I needed to get done at the church, actually. And I said to myself, I really got to mow my lawn. My lawn's a disaster most of the time, but I knew I needed to get it done. So I didn't go to the church and do anything, and I decided to mow the lawn. Instead, I woke up the next morning, and I read this, and Pastor read this last week. He and I didn't talk about this at all, and, after all, people read from the book of Haggai all the time. So it was completely coincidental that he read it last week and that I was planning on reading it, because after telling myself on a Monday night, I really need to do that, but I have to mow my lawn, I wake up on a Tuesday morning and I read this. In the second year of King Darius, on the first day of the 6th month, the word of the Lord came through Haggai the prophet to Zerubbabel, that's fun, son of that guy, the governor of Judah, and to Joshua, son of Jehozadak. There we go. The Lord of hosts says, these people say the time has not come for the house of the Lord to be rebuilt. The word of the Lord came through Haggai the prophet, saying, is it a time for you yourselves to live in your paneled houses while this house lies in ruins? They had just come back from the exile, and they had to do a lot of rebuilding. There was lots of work that needed to be done, and they hadn't addressed the temple yet. So do you think it's time for you to be living in your paneled houses while the Lord's house lies in ruins? Now, the Lord of hosts says this, think carefully about your ways. You have planted much, but harvested little. You eat, but never have enough to be satisfied. You drink, but never have enough to become drunk. You put on clothes, but never have enough to get warm. The wage earner puts his wages into a bag with a hole in it. And I'm thinking to myself, that sounds really accurate. How many of you have ever felt that way before? That no matter what you do, no matter how much you have, it's just not enough. The Lord of hosts says this, think carefully about your ways. Go up into the hills, bring down lumber, and build the house. Then I will be pleased with it and be glorified, says the Lord. You expected much, but then it amounted a little. When you brought the harvest to your house, I ruined it. Why? This is This is the declaration of the Lord of hosts. Because my house still lies in ruins, while each of you is busy with his own house. And I feel like God took a 48.5-pound Bible and dropped it on my head and said, "Stupid." And I was like, "Oh, thanks for that. That's very nice of you." You know, I don't think that anybody would fault me for mowing my lawn rather than coming to the church and fixing something. But you know what I did the next chance that I got? I was here doing what needed to be done. Because I understand that even though I'm real busy, or now I understand. Still a little bitter over that one, I gotta say. Even though I was real busy, and even though I didn't have enough time to do what I needed to do, if I had my priorities straight, if I put God first, if I put what he expected of me forward, and cared about my own things second, you know what? The lawn got mowed. You know, things got taken care of. She doesn't have her picture hung up yet, but I have a slight animus towards hanging pictures. But put God first. All this other stuff that you busy yourself with, great. You might really feel pressed that you have to do it, but put God first. Because until you do that, if I'm to understand this right, you won't have enough time. You're always going to be busy. And things aren't going to get done because we don't have our priorities right. So what happened in Haggai's case? You know what happens after this if you continue reading Haggai? People get stirred up. It says that the Lord stirred up certain people. People got busy. People got work done. People got together and said, "We're going to go out and do it." They built the house of God. The glory of God filled the house, and God was glorified. God received honor, and God received praise because people said, "Okay, enough of my own stuff. I'm going to go do what God expects of me." And you know, when we go in our meetings in this church, and when we, the pastors and the deacons get together, you know, we've got a lot of vision for what this church can be. We've got a lot of dreams about where we can go and who we can reach. And there's a lot of people in this church today, right now, who are busy doing what's needed so that you can sit here and listen. Right? There are people who are so dedicated to what they do that I can wander on in here this morning, barely getting one foot in front of the other and not able to talk straight. And I don't have to worry about what happens. I don't have to worry about worship. I don't have to worry about the sound because the sound guys take care of it. I don't need to worry about who's saying what or who's doing what because there are so many people in this church building at this moment that do their jobs with commitment, that do their jobs with excellence. And most of us can't name but a few of them. Because they're not out there doing these things so that they can be recognized. But you know what? Even though there are so many people right now who do those things, down the road there's going to be so many more opportunities for more of you to do more. There's going to be opportunities for each one of us to step up and say, "Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, I'll put some effort in. Yeah, it might take some commitment. It might take, saying I'm going to be there when I don't know if I have time, but I'll do that." And when we do that, God receives glory. There are countless things that we could do. Even right now, what's going on in Texas is a great example. If you can't go, send some money. If you can't take the time out of your schedule, donate to it. But get involved some way, somehow. There's always going to be work to do until Jesus Christ comes back. So maybe given the fact that service and commitment and sacrifice and dependability and diligence are things that are just lost for so many people. Don't talk to me about that. Just let me do my thing. Ask yourself, what's one thing maybe that you've been putting off or ignoring? What's one thing that you know that you could get involved in, that you know that you could do, but you've been saying no to it this whole time? I would ask you today to say yes. And to say yes with joy. To say yes with commitment. But also because busyness and frustration and exasperation and discouragement are things that we just know way too much of. I'd say to you, what is something right now that you know that you could say no to? Even if it means that you're worried that it's not going to get done, even if it means that you think, oh, but I have to do that, there's nobody else. What's something that you can say no to? Because God would rather have you do something with joy than do a lot of things with frustration. Does that make sense? God would rather have you fully embrace a few things and do them with happiness and do them with commitment than to just partially embrace a lot of things and have a bad attitude about it like Martha had. I would ask you to take those things and let go of them. And let go of them in faith that it's going to be okay. Things are going to get taken care of. What God's really asked me to do is this. Bow your heads and close your eyes with me. Lord, we thank you for your word today. We thank you for the example that you set. We just pray that you would wake us up to serve. You would wake us up to do things for you and to do things in your kingdom. And I just pray that through the coming months, we'd be looking for ways that we could serve. We'd be looking for ways that we could see other people and have a care for them and have a concern for them that wants to see their needs met. And I pray that through that, people would come to know who you are, and people would come to experience your love and your goodness. Lord, shine a light in front of us each and every day to illuminate those opportunities where we can say yes, where we can do what we know needs to be done. And God, I pray that through that, countless people would have the opportunity to experience that which is better, to hear your word, to know your love, and to be in your presence. I just thank you and praise you for that. Give each person here a great week. Help us to get our priorities straight and serve you and love you. And now, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. And may the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you his peace. Amen. Don't forget the picnic after the church. Left out the end of the road, Young Lane.